morning. We have the Youth Advisory Board as the first item on the agenda. So, you just start. You're good to go.
I'm the chair of the Youth Advisory Board, and I go to Roosevelt High School. And if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
I'm Cece Verplume. I'm a vice chair of the Youth Advisory Board, and I represent Shiro's Young Women's Philanthropy Institute.
I'm Sophie Vandersky. I'm a junior at Dowling, and I represent DMAC and Dowling.
I'm Samantha Olson, and I go to Dowling, and hopefully I will be representing the first team program of Greater Des Moines.
My name is Michaela Rickard, and I'm a sophomore at Dowling, and I'm an at-large member.
All right. And the Youth Advisory Board, we have 22 spots for representatives from the Greater Des Moines high schools and youth and adult organizations. Unfortunately, none of our adult members could be here this morning. But our purpose is to serve a link between the youth of Des Moines and the adult members, you guys that are making the decisions that affect us. And we have 15 spots for youth representatives from Dowling, East, Hoover, North, Lincoln, Scavo, Roosevelt. We have a couple at-large spots and community representatives. However, at the moment, from current members right now are just from Roosevelt and Dowling. And we actually plan on having another Roosevelt representative for the next year, as well as 5 applications from other schools that aren't being represented at our next meeting. And as I mentioned, we have 7 adult members from various organizations in Des Moines as well. And our mission, as I said already, is to provide a youth perspective on issues and decisions that directly affect them, as well as working with the City Council. Many of us attend City Council meetings regularly just to hear what's going on and if there's anything that we have a say in. And we also volunteer in the community. And what we've done as far as future projects go, in addition to attending City Council meetings, we attend meetings for other community boards such as Sister Cities, the Des Moines Music Commission, and Parks and Recreation. We did the DM-Palooza in 2009, and as far as our mission goes, it's creating a more youth-friendly place for kids in Des Moines, and so that was part of it. It was kind of an American Idol event, as well as volunteering for the annual Earth Day Trash Bash. That's coming up on Thursday, and we'll just be cleaning up the downtown area. And we also did a lot of publicity for the Des Moines Music Commission Open Forum, which will be taking place this Thursday. And the big thing that affects us is the minor curfew in music venues, which currently is 9 p.m. And we have a lot of kids that are involved in the music scene, if you will, who would like to see that extended. And so what we did was basically just create a Facebook event and just publicize it for youth to come to this open forum so that we have youth there giving their perspective instead of just having adults making these decisions.
Where's the forum at?
I believe it'll be here this Thursday from 4 to 8. Okay. And we provided insight to community leaders on rising violence in Des Moines. It was about a couple months ago that a member from the Drake Neighborhood Association, I believe, came to our meeting. And she kind of told us about what some of the ideas they had talked about doing, one of which was imposing a curfew. And it was just an opportunity to discuss and kind of give our opinion as to how we felt a curfew would help, if at all, and what we felt would be a good solution. And we kind of came to the conclusion that a curfew probably wouldn't do much because many students already have a curfew that they fight with their parents. I don't know if you guys know that. And a couple months ago as well, we participated in the Civic Engagement Forum. This was at the Central Library, and it was just basically discussing how public schools in Des Moines and around the country should be structured. And my sister and I were the only youth members to go to that. And they actually expressed gratitude after the forum for having a youth perspective there, because many of them were retired educators or current teachers. And then also, this is a future project. It's Green My Parents with the Central Library, and hopefully we could we're hoping to have an event when the Franklin Library opens as well. But basically, it's just encouraging a more green environmental mentality. And our challenges have been increasing membership. As you can see, our representation is fairly limited. However, in about a month ago, there was someone from the Register actually did a piece on many of the smaller committees that exist, and we were one of them that she interviewed, and that helped a lot. We've actually had 7 or 8 people apply within the last 2 months, simply because they read about us in the newspaper or they heard about it from one of their parents. And also making Des Moines a more youth-friendly place, which is going to constantly be a challenge for any city. And we've had the opportunity to go to like League of Cities conferences and learn about how other cities have tried to overcome this challenge. So yeah. And as our goals are providing the youth voice, increasing membership by attracting members from other schools, which we are actually doing right now, and we're seeing kids from Lincoln North and Hoover and East applying, which is really nice, and it's spreading the word about the Youth Advisory Board. So whether it's through our other commission, by making our presence known at these other committee board meetings, or through having that article in the newspaper, or just giving some kind of comment on a youth issue, and then increasing our involvement in the community. So, thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
When you have students, if they express interest in becoming a member of the advisory board, what's the process? Who makes the final decision on that?
There's an application online that they fill out, and they either come to the meeting and they submit to our monthly meeting. It's every second Tuesday, or they can email it to Emily Collins, who works with the city manager. She works with us.
Okay.
And so we, at the meeting, our monthly meeting, we will review the application. We'll ask the student questions if they're there, and we'll accept them.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Next up is Drake Law class on sustainability.
While they set that up, good morning, council members. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jonathan Rosenblum. I'm a professor of law at Drake University Law School. We have here today 4 presentations for you, 4 student presentations that were put together as part of the course Sustainability and its Application. The purpose of the course was to give the students an opportunity to look at sustainability in a very concrete fashion. And so what that meant was looking at the Des Moines Code and some of the regulations and policies that were happening in Des Moines and try to propose concrete changes to that to enhance sustainability. And they'll discuss a little bit about what we're looking at with sustainability, but it included environmental friendliness, social responsibility, and economic vitality. So the 4 student presentations, good morning, Mayor. The 4 student presentations are each going to be about 5 minutes long. And I believe we agreed, Councilmember Hensley, that after each presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions, or also at the end, again, however council members want. And what we'll do is we'll go in the order that we'll start with sustainable procurement, so the purchase of goods for the city, then sustainable construction and design in Des Moines, then number 3, number 3, urban forests, and then finally agricultural runoff, and what we can do here in the city for those. So with that, I'll turn it over to them. But again, thank you for this opportunity, and we very much look forward to your feedback and how we might be able to take these to the next step. Thank you.
So good morning, mayors. Good morning, members of council. This is Corey Langust. I'm Maria Maconde. We are very thankful for the opportunity to talk about sustainable procurement this morning in front of you. And we are going to discuss why and how to incorporate sustainability into Des Moines procurement policy. So incorporating sustainability would have a lot of benefits in Des Moines, and the first would be like fiscal benefits by looking beyond the price the purchase price and consider all costs that the city bears during its procurement, such as energy saving and also waste disposal, and so on. King County and Massachusetts did like tremendous benefits, respectively save $1.5 million annually and $3.2 million. And there is also environmental benefit and social benefit who goes in by incorporating sustainability. So in order to achieve those benefits of a sustainable procurement, sustainability needs to be incorporated into like a mandatory system with a mandatory procedure. And the most common way to procure in Des Moines is through the competitive bidding process. And we wonder like how sustainable is this process? And well, we noticed that the process only by focusing only on price, by awarding the lowest qualifying bid, it doesn't take into account the whole life cost of products, such as energy needs and durability, and it doesn't either consider environmental and social impact. Nevertheless, we are also aware that there are like sustainable projects who has been implemented, but they are not. They are like an exception, and they are not part of the process, and they are not institutionalized. And finally, in Des Moines, there is no really like a monitoring or an evaluation system, and we couldn't even find a list of products and services that Des Moines is buying each year. So we couldn't even evaluate how unsustainable or sustainable was this process.
So in order to incorporate sustainability into Des Moines' existing procurement process, we've drafted a code and a policy, hopefully for the City Council to adopt. And what the code does is it harmonizes the existing competitive bidding process with sustainable procurement. And it does this by allowing for whole life costs to be used as an alternative to the purchase price in determining the lowest qualifying bid. It also allows for price preferences. And then it sets up a sustainable procurement committee, and that committee is tasked with setting standards, education and outreach, and monitoring and reporting. And then the policy statement that we've drafted just provides guidance for the city and, more importantly, for the Sustainable Procurement Committee in terms of carrying out those tasks. So how the sustainable procurement works in our policy and our code that we've drafted is first it starts with a Sustainable Procurement Committee. That committee is tasked with calculating a baseline that includes the current procurement practices of Des Moines, and then from that, the committee will identify target commodities in order to draft sustainable standards for. And then while they draft sustainable standards, which could simply be from third-party organizations like Energy Star, the Environmental Protection Agency, etc., they will conduct pilot studies for various departments to implement and to evaluate the feasibility of those standards. Those pilot studies will be very instrumental. And then in evaluating the pilot studies, the committee will also be reporting the benefits as well that come through those pilot studies. When the committee determines that a standard is feasible, then the purchasing administrator can approve that standard. Once the purchasing administrator does approve the standard, then the purchasing administrator and the committee can encourage the standard to be used in purchase order specifications. And then it also can be allowed as a price preference for products and services that meet that standard. And of course, during this whole process, it's really important to have a system of monitoring, evaluation, and reporting that progress. So as a summary of how sustainability can be incorporated into the existing procurement process, we've provided this slide. So in the first section, the sustainable standards that are drafted by the committee can be incorporated into purchase order specifications. If they're not incorporated into purchase order specifications, alternatively, Products that meet those standards can be given a price preference. And if there's not a standard drafted, then the purchasing administrator would have the discretion to use a whole life cost as opposed to the purchase price in determining the lowest qualifying bid. Our report that we've drafted has a much more comprehensive view of the benefits of sustainable procurement, existing practices that are going on in other cities that provided the basis for our recommendation, and a more comprehensive, of course, study of our recommendations, along with the draft of our code and our policy. And so if you have any questions, you can direct them, of course, to our email address that we've provided here, or shortly here if you have any immediately.
Corey, do you have, so you're saying that there are other cities throughout the country, throughout the U.S. that actually have this policy in place?
Yes, there's a number of
And those were the two
cities.
that you talked about early in the presentation?
Mm-hmm. New York City, of course, King County, Massachusetts, which we provided a lot of, Santa Monica, California,
It's King
Portland,
County,
Oregon,
Washington,
Seattle,
isn't it?
Seattle, Washington. That's right, King County, Washington. So I think we've found a group of 15, 20 cities just in our report that we've highlighted. And then those are the ones that have kind of broadcasted their policies. And then I'm sure there's all sorts of other ones that are a lot more kind of underneath the radar.
Thank you very much. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we switch over to the next, just take a brief second just to note that there are, so the 4 reports, I believe, were circulated, and so hopefully you have them, and if not, I can certainly get them to you. One other point, Councilmember Hensley, is that in their report for procurement, when they drafted the code and the policy, in the report that you have, hopefully, they've actually highlighted the areas where they extracted similar language from other cities.
Okay.
And so just to make that connection.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the Council. I'm Joel Radai, and my partner is John Crotty, and we have a presentation for you regarding sustainable building and design in Des Moines. Our challenge for this project was to look at ways to promote greater sustainability in Des Moines commercial buildings and focusing on the Des Moines Partnership's goals of economic development and the realities of the city budget. Today we're going to talk about, first we'll go through a few benefits of green buildings, and then a couple of efforts that we found in other cities, and then we'll go on to our proposal.
And if you've got the reports in front of you right here, you can turn to the back. We've got some draft ordinances that we thought you guys could implement. And if you like this proposal, we can certainly look at it later.
Just a couple of brief statistics we found here. In general, LEED buildings, we found that they average 18 to 39% energy savings over the non-green design counterparts, and also energy efficient buildings sell at up to 10% higher per square foot values than conventional buildings. Generally, sustainable buildings have higher occupancy for both new construction and existing buildings, as well as higher rent values, which those would both translate into higher tax revenues for the city, as buildings would be used more than they are currently. And also they've been shown to be more productive for the workers who are actually in the buildings in various studies, including the one we found here, where office workers reported an increase of 40 hours per year in productivity. And then here's just a few of the other efforts that we incorporated into our presentation here. We looked at something in Portland and Chicago, and also a program that Mid-American Energy is doing right here.
And so we'll get into our proposal right now. And we just wanted to point out that we kind of picked a little bit from each of these 3 different programs that are already out there. With Portland, they're doing something where they'll refund your permit fees based on the level of green that you achieve. And in Chicago, they incorporated what they call menu items. So they've developed a list of green goals that are kind of specific to Chicago, and they reward you if you meet those goals. And then finally with Mid-American, that's a program that's already going here. We just wanted to incorporate that into our plan so that the city can kind of piggyback on this effort that's already underway. So basically our proposal consists of restructuring the permit fee schedule. We want to create a tiered incentive scheme where you'll get a reward based on third-party certification of your green building. So the levels, the tiers that we've devised are first complying with the Mid-American program or Energy Star, and then the higher levels are based on LEED certification. Then like Chicago, we want to come up with a list of Des Moines-centered sustainability goals. So for instance, it might be green roofs to help with our runoff and flooding problems, or it might be indoor air quality to kind of bolster this image of Des Moines as a good place to work. And then ultimately, once we've got this tier in place, you'll get your permit fees refunded, or if you achieve a higher level, you'll actually get a bonus back. So in this next slide, we've kind of got a visual representation of how this would work. For those people that just meet the energy code, they pay their permit fee like normal, and they're out the permit fee money just like usual. If you comply with this Mid-American program or Energy Star, you get your permit fee refunded, so you're back to normal. If you go higher and you build LEED Silver and you incorporate 1 to 2 of these Des Moines menu items, you get your fee refunded plus an actual bonus. And then if you go a higher level, include more menu items, you get a larger bonus. And the idea, this is the way they did it in Portland, they use these people on the left, they're just meeting the energy code. So those fees, all the people that are meeting those fees are going to be paying for these rewards over here. So the idea is that you're giving people a real incentive, to build higher than they need to. And the idea is that the whole program will be self-sustaining. So that's our proposal. We go into a lot more detail in the report, and if you have any questions at all, we'd be happy to take them now, or we'll hang around afterwards if you want to.
Can you go back to the slide that had the bar graph on it?
Yep.
Please. So you're saying that the no rewards are going to be the funds that reimburse the fee refund and the fee plus bonus?
Right, and that's the tricky part, is setting the fee schedule at the right amount, so that...
Because it looks like the city would have to make up the gap. Is that correct?
Well, it depended. The way our proposals would be structured is that the only money that would be available for the refund is what's being paid in. Depending on
by the no reward?
Yeah, so it's not supposed to be something where the city's going to be throwing money in the pot. It's just going to be funded by the people who are paying their building fees.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that is they take this down, we had a discussion about with some of the other things that they could do within the system that we have, whether it's TIF or whether it's abatement, and to change our abatement policies to reward somebody to LEED Gold, they'd get 5 years, or Silver's 4, everybody else gets 3 or 2 or something. So there's a variety of things we could look at to get that done. I think that they sort of like this piece the best, but they realize that there's lots of other things that we do specifically. Good job.
Thanks.
Good morning, Mayor and members of council. My name is Chris Frank, and I am a third-year law student. And I prepared this report with my partner, Sam Bolton, who was unable to attend today. And the title of my presentation is Sustaining Des Moines Urban Forest. And first off, I'd like to applaud the City Council and the city on their efforts to preserve, protect, and grow the urban forest. The passage of the tree mitigation policy for the mitigation of trees on private property was a huge step in growing the urban forest. And also the passage of the city policy to preserve trees that are on city property was another huge step to aid in the growth of the urban forest. But I'd like to present 3 proposals that will help the city obtain this goal. And my first proposal is going to focus on the mitigation exceptions that exist in the current tree preservation or tree mitigation policy on both private property and public property. And the mitigation exceptions exist for trees that are dead or dying and trees that are of undesirable species. So under these exceptions, you don't need to mitigate trees that are dead or dying or undesirable. And in some situations and in some cities, those mitigation exceptions would be sustainable. However, in light of the emerald ash borer problem, they're largely unsustainable because as of right now, you don't need to mitigate for ash trees because they're of an undesirable species. And even if that exception didn't exist, once the emerald ash borer arrived, most ash trees would most likely be infested and would be dead or dying, and they wouldn't require mitigation either. So to address this issue, I would like to require the mitigation for ash trees. That would be narrowly tailored to address the emerald ash borer problem. And in the future, it could be amended to combat future threats to the urban forests in the form of pests or diseases. Wholesale elimination of these mitigation exceptions probably wouldn't be feasible, and there are also limited policy reasons to keep them in place. And that's kind of the language that we would see. We keep the mitigation exceptions, but then you'd have an exception for ash trees, which would mean you'd have to mitigate for ash trees. A second proposal, which is kind of along the same line as the emerald ash borer problem, would be requiring a diversity of species to be planted when mitigating for lost trees. So under this proposal, you can only plant up to 10% of one species of tree when mitigating. And this would protect against future catastrophic loss. The loss of the elm trees when the Dutch elm disease arrived in the 60s and 70s devastated the urban forest. And also, ash trees were largely planted to replace those elm trees, and now we're losing ash trees because of the emerald ash borer. So a policy like this, requiring species diversity, would help protect against future loss. And third and final proposal relates to public outreach. And the plan's kind of modeled after the New York City plan, which was part of a larger initiative to create sustainable policies in New York. And they established a goal of planting 1 million trees, and I believe they're almost halfway toward their goal. And some of the results of their plan showed that there was an increased survival rate of trees. People were more excited about planting trees and less apprehensive. It strengthened community relationships, and it reduces the need for government resources for urban forestry. So you could actually see reduced costs in maintaining the urban forest. And for this community outreach proposal, the 3 steps would be to provide increased web-based resources for education, promotion, and the recording of tree planting by private citizens. And you could provide these resources on the Des Moines City website, or solidify a partnership with Trees Forever to provide resources. And then finally, actually set a tree planting goal. I don't have the expertise to say how many trees that would be, but set a goal of 100,000 trees by 2020, and then allow people to actually plant trees and then go on the website and record the planting of those trees. And that way you can monitor and track how far you're coming on reaching your goal. Those are my 3 proposals. If you have any questions, I could take the questions now, or you could contact me at a later date.
Anybody? Skip? Ellie? Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, members of City Council. My name is Judd Jensen. I'm a third-year at Drake Law student. Today I'll be speaking about agricultural runoff, which is an important issue for the state, and it's important for Des Moines, since agriculture makes up such a huge portion of our economy in this state. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to very quickly look at what agricultural runoff is. We're going to look at why it's a problem for Iowa. We're going to look at the scale of that problem, since it's vast. I'm going to very, very briefly mention some legislative opportunities that we should promote at the state level, and then we're going to make some local policy recommendations. Now, there's 2 types of runoff. I won't go into a lot of detail about this for lack of time, but it's important to realize that there's surface runoff from rain and snow, which is just running across the top of the ground and picking up anything that's loose, there's light manure or dirt, and so it picks up that and takes it to the river. And there's also subsurface runoff coming off of the tile system, And when you look at pollution, this is mainly nitrate. Since nitrate is water soluble, it actually goes through the ground, gets picked up by the tile systems, and then dumped into the river. And right now we have about 25% of our farmland in the state is tile, with more going in every day. We're also in the process of modernizing our tile system to make them more efficient. And as we make them more efficient, that's going to mean more nitrate going into our rivers. So the problems are only going to get worse. Now, there's a lot of problems associated with agriculture runoff, from flooding to algae blooms. Obviously, water pollution is a huge problem here for the Des Moines Water Works, trying to get it clean so that we can drink it for the public. And of course, at the national scale, there's the dead zone in the Gulf, which is basically an embarrassment for the whole country, since it's the largest dead zone in the world. Now, the scale of the problem, like I mentioned earlier, is vast. We have a lot of water resource in this state, which could be hugely valuable for recreation, fishing, and a wide range of public uses, but right now, the vast majority of them are highly polluted. In the recent 2010 survey by the DNR, 572 were considered impaired under the Clean Water Act, which means they're not meeting their designated uses. There was only 13 of our state waterways that actually passed the testing and were actually meeting the designated uses under the Clean Water Act. And there was another 1,600, which we simply lack the data to tell whether they actually meet the Clean Water Act standards or not. And so there's a huge lack of understanding of where our water is, but most of the testing shows a lot of problems. Obviously, when you have 572 failing and only 13 passing, that's a problem. Now, I'll mention very briefly two legislative opportunities that I go into a lot more detail with in the report, and that is the lack of sufficient setback requirements in the state. Now, we have very comparable setback requirements to many other states, but as you can see from the scale of our problem, they're clearly not working. And so we need to have a little more detail in the setbacks, and we need to remove some exceptions from the setback rules that are currently in place, because the exceptions right now are eating the rule and allowing people not to set back. We also need a well-thought-out minimum standard practices to promote conservation in the state. And these would be minimum requirements that every farmer, every livestock producer would have to meet in order to raise livestock and farm in this state. And they would basically be set at a level that's going to maintain our clean water at a drinking quality, or for whatever other designated uses we would have for it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in my report I go into a lot more details. We look at what exactly the policy is right now. We look at some policies from other states, including Minnesota, which has a lot more advanced setback requirements than we have right now. When we look at minimum practice standards, again, we look at a lot of the problems with our current system, which relies on voluntary funding and voluntary action. And I'm a huge supporter of voluntary funding actions, but obviously when we have an economy like we have right now, that's the first thing that gets cut, is that voluntary funding. And without the funding, farmers are not going to implement the conservation practices themselves. And now we'll look at some policy recommendations here that can be done locally. And the first thing is we need to create coalitions of cities and counties along the Raccoon and the Des Moines to work at this at a larger level than just what we can do locally, since obviously we're just one little piece of the chain, and we need everybody upstream and everybody downstream playing a part. And so it's important to act as part of a coalition when you're trying to keep a river clean. Now, there's been a lot of great work done by coalitions in the state. There's obviously Iowa Agriculture Clean Water Coalition. There's also the Iowa Water and Land Legacy Coalition. Both have done a lot of great work and have been recognized in recent years. And so you can also act within those existing coalitions, making sure that you have a voice at the table. We can also need to establish dedicated funding. And this is probably going to have to be voluntary given the economy. And that could be done with simply a $1 checkoff on monthly water bills, where those who wanted to support conservation in the state could pay an additional $1 every month, and we could use that money to promote conservation across the state. Now, when you're looking at how you can spend that money, one thing we could do is we could work with the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture to develop minimum conservation practice standards. And this has not really been done at the state. We have a lot of work done at the best practice standard level, in other words, what the ideal is, but we don't really talk about what is the minimum level that every farmer has to meet. And so we really need to figure out what that is if we're going to keep our rivers clean. We also need to figure out where the pollutants are coming from. And so the fourth step in this proposal is simply to have a really detailed testing and survey of our current water systems, especially along the Raccoon and Des Moines, since those are the most important for the city of Des Moines, and basically figure out where those pollutants are entering the river and identify what which pieces of the river are at most at risk, which need to be addressed first. And so then the fifth step, when we start looking at purchasing conservation easements and purchasing land, we're actually purchasing the land that's most at risk, where the pollutants are actually coming from, and which pollutants are actually the most dangerous, and trying to stop them at their source. And so that we're not cleaning up later when they get to the city, but we're actually preventing that pollution before it even enters the river. And once we own the land or own the conservation easement, then we could plant vegetative buffers or just simply leave the land in CRP, and therefore keep that water from just taking all of its chemicals, all of the dirt, and washing it into the river. Do you have any questions?
That's a great presentation, and I think it's meaningful to us here in the city of Des Moines, given what's happened over the last 3 years here and some anticipated problems in the future. And I, for one, totally agree with your thoughts on this. I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Mayor, I've got a question for Chris that gave the presentation on urban forestry. You had the opportunity to take a good hard look at the tree ordinance for New York City.
Not so much, no. I'm just familiar with the Plan NYC, where they set the goal of 1 million trees, and then they're doing the monitoring with the website.
Okay, so you didn't see what their tree mitigation rates were or anything like that?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Get our jump drive out of here.
Mr. Mayor, I think that all 4 of the presentations have just been excellent, and I know we have a committee on sustainability. It would be nice, I think, to refer that information and recommendations to that committee and have them look at that and maybe come back with recommendations that they feel would be applicable for the city of Des Moines, if that's what the rest of the council would agree with.
Absolutely. I think that, Mr. Manager, I think that it'd be wise to refer it to that committee, and I think I had the opportunity to listen to their full presentations, and I think there's lots of questions that came out of it, and I'm sure it would be very enlightening to staff, and maybe a couple of council members if they wanted to attend them as well, because I think working together is how we're going to.
That would be fantastic.
You bet.
Yeah, should I work with City Manager?
Yeah, let me just say, Mr. Mayor, council members, really great presentations. Appreciate all the work of your students to put it together, and lots of great ideas in there, and lots of different ways to get from here to there on those things. And so with the motion or the suggestion to get it back to our committee, we'll work with you. And as the mayor says, if a couple council members want to participate, we'd be happy to do that, and we'll see if we can carry the ball forward.
And I think they all deserve A's, just my 2 cents worth. I know that's an important part of this process, too. So
just for getting up so early. I never got up that early in law school.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Manager, should we move on to the Botanical Center agreement?
Good morning, Mayor, County, members of the Des Moines City Council. Ben Page, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide you an update on the proposed Botanical Center development project. And in attendance today is one of the leaders of the development project, Mr. Fred Weitz. There he is, he moved. And Fred will be here to help assist with questions you may have. Since 1929, interest for public display gardens and botanical destinations have been well received in Des Moines. However, the vision for a formal botanical center was not realized until 1979. In 2008, leaders of the Friends of the Botanical Centers and civic supporters envisioned a new future for the Botanical Center that would allow for its development and resurgence as a major cultural and educational facility. They hired EMD Consulting Group and Hairshot Landscaping Architects to develop a proposed master plan. Upon development of the master plan on May 10th of 2010, the City Council received and filed a list of guiding principles, which included the proposal to close Robert D. Ray Drive. There have been 7 public meetings regarding this proposal. Today, the city has an agreement with Des Moines Waterworks to manage and operate the facility. However, this agreement is scheduled to end on December 31st, 2012. As part of this agreement, the city has provided $600,000 in capital improvements. However, no capital improvements have taken place since 2006. The current Bravo allocation is $195,000 per year. The plan. This plan is simply the vision. Additional details and design will be taking place if the proposed lease agreement would be approved. Additionally, a detailed master plan would be provided to the City Council for approval prior to the commencement of the lease, should you approve. The concept. The concept has been a long-term lease agreement in which the first term was 25 years with 2 25-year renewals. More important than the length of the proposed agreement is the continued public access to this facility, its programs, and the recreational trail. The financing proposal from the developers includes a minimum investment of $10 million during the first 5 years. Of the $10 million, $7.5 will be for improvements to the facility, $2 million for an endowment, and $500,000 for related costs during the first 5 years. In return, they have asked the city to provide an economic development grant of $200,000 a year for 10 years. Bravo funding to increase from $195,000 to $245,000 over 10 years, and for the city to be responsible for the ADA transition plan, to relocate the trail, perform scheduled sewer repairs, and install a fire hydrant. By providing this proposed funding, the city would avoid making substantially higher capital investments or the possible need for the decision to close the facility. Some of the physical impacts of this proposal include previously planned city projects. Constructed in the late 1970s, the John Pat Dorian Trail is one of the oldest trails in the metro area. Over the last 20 years, the trail has begun to show significant deterioration. Additionally, the sewer lining and repairs are tentatively scheduled for this fall. As previously noted, on May 10, 2010, the City Council approved guiding principles that have been used to develop this long-term lease proposal. These guiding principles include the city to close and vacate Robert D. Ray Drive at the overpass of I-235 north to the East 6th Street terminus, and relocate the trail. Lease commencement date of January 1, 2013, or January 1, 2014 at the developer's option, with 6 months' notice to the city. The city would own improvements at the termination of the lease. The plans would include an improved emergency access and improvements to the fire protection system, and the city would have 2 positions on their board of directors. The leasee will also have the naming rights on all new improvements, any existing structures already designated, and they will honor existing donation agreements. The city will still have the right to enter the leased premises at all times for maintenance, inspection, construction related to the trail, levee, and utilities, including flood fighting. The city to support the operations for the first 10 years for Bravo funding at the completion of the improvements. The City Council will also approve a master plan and review significant changes to the proposed master plan. In conclusion, this proposal will relieve the city of current infrastructure and operating costs to the Botanical Center. Resulting costs will be similar in the amount to basic infrastructure improvements and repair needs that the city would be responsible for in the event the facility would revert to the city. The return is a greatly improved attraction for the city of Des Moines. Next steps. Tonight on your agenda is the set date of hearing for the lease and vacation of the leased premises, including Robert D. Ray Drive. On May 9th, they are asking the approval of an economic development agreement and the hearing on the lease and vacation of the closure of Robert D. Ray Drive. They've also requested the waiver of the second and third hearings at your May 9th meeting. Then 6 months prior to the lease commencement, they would provide a master plan for your review. Questions?
So assuming that we meet that timeline, the next steps that you just outlined, what would be the construction date then? Approximate. Next construction season?
We hope it will start January 1st, 2013.
Okay.
It depends on whether we're successful in raising the 10 million by then. If we're not, we would ask for an extension, and it would be a year later.
Okay.
Anybody else? Council?
Very good. Thank you.
All right, it comes that.
Well, I might comment a little bit, Frank. I've kind of been involved with the group. It's the four main fundraisers and that, and they've done a great job in their presentations and meetings with the neighbors and that. And you know, some of them have had some concerns about closing the Robert E. Ray. I think that's a small investment for the city to have what we're going to have these new botanical gardens in the concept that they're presenting. And I think it's going to have some benefit to East Village, because as you bring more cars down through the East Village, they're going to be more aware of what they have to offer in that. So I think it's a great plan, and they're certainly going to support it all the way.
I'm very supportive too. I really like it. You know, when we first looked at it, Ben, and I thought, well, this is either going to have to work, or we're going to have to cut this thing loose. And so I think you all did a very good job, and I'm very supportive of it. And including the since it's in my ward, including the closure of Robert D. Ray Drive.
I think the important thing too is that we have commitment from Bravo.
Yeah.
For the additional $50,000 for 10 years. That's very significant, and was not easily achieved.
I can imagine.
Towards that end, Mr. Mayor, Council, could I just mention this on the Bravo agreement, since you mentioned that, Christine? It is important. These are sort of tandem pieces. It'd be my suggestion that we try to get the new Bravo agreement on your next agenda, or as soon as we
Our workshop, are we talking about a workshop first?
Yes,
and then
workshop on the Bravo agreement and then to the agenda.
What was the timeline on this? Ben, can you go back? Is there a chance to go back? I'd like to get it done as soon as possible. Are we setting the hearing tonight on the?
Yeah. You're setting.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
May 9th then.
The best thing you could do, depending on your attitude about it, would be to waive the second and third readings of the ordinance. That would expedite it.
You could
Which would
on May
be
9th.
So okay, on the 9th we're going to come back with the hearing.
Yes.
The hearing and
on the vacation and lease.
And they have requested to waive the second and third hearings. So you could be completed depending what you decide on May 9th.
So would it be appropriate then that we could have the Bravo discussion at the workshop on the morning of the 9th, and then take action at the same time on the?
That would be
ideal, I think, because it does tie into this.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
That's what we'll do.
Okay.
Fred, could we ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
In light of the interest of, it looks like most of everybody on the council, is there, we're going to try our best to expedite this process. Do you have some thoughts as to how we could help you improve the scheduling on, and move that up prior to the 2013 timeframe?
Well, you can help us raise the money. From the very beginning, the concept has been that the lease commencement date would be conditioned on our raising the $10 million. And we understand that, and we understand why that's the way it is. We've already begun our thinking and talking to a few people, but we haven't actually formally begun the fund drive. We expect to even prior to May 9th, but that's really the
Mr. Mayor, could I tag on to what Mr. White is saying? I think that's all accurate, but you've also done a great job in terms of generating operating dollars in advance, and so I think you've got a little ways to go, but you've already gotten commitments, assuming the council approves this agreement, but you've got some from Waterworks and from Bravo and perhaps others. And so one of the really great features about your work on this is you've attempted to put together operating and maintenance dollars at the front end. In my experience, that's a terrific thing to do. It's not always done in these sorts of projects, but you've done a lot of work there, and I think that piece is pretty close to being in place, which I think ought to make the capital campaign a bit easier to accomplish.
Yeah, we've negotiated the agreement with the waterworks. They have not actually taken that to the board. My understanding is the board will pass it, but we need to get that done.
And Mr. Mayor, that might be something this council could help encourage water boards to do.
That's
that
true.
would be a helpful thing.
That's for $200,000 of in-kind help for per year for 10 years. That's the understanding. And I think in-kind probably means that they'll carry folks like some of the same horticulturalists that are presently working there on their payroll. And
are you anticipating then that that 10-year agreement would start in 2013 at this point?
No, it'll start when we're in operation. I'm hopeful that we can finish the construction in that first year, but surely we'll finish it during the summer of the second year if we can't quite make it the first year.
I'm a little concerned. I think we've got a bit of a gap if Waterworks steps away in 12 and maybe 13, maybe 14, maybe whenever that we start that. Who's going to pick up the gap between when you start and Waterworks finishes?
Well, assuming we start on the 1st of January 2013, that would be our problem. And we have money built into the budget for operating costs that we'd have during that construction period. If we start January 1, 2014, then, yeah, there's a unresolved problem. I don't know that it's a problem. I guess I have assumed that you would ask the Waterworks to stay in place for another year. And I've assumed that they probably would, but that hasn't been actually dealt with.
Okay. Well, that's probably we add that to our list of things to do.
Yeah.
Been to a number of your events. I think that's been well received by most everybody, at least all the meetings that I've been to. Everybody seems to, with some questions, but I think your group is providing adequate insight, understanding, and solutions to the problem. So appreciate all your work, Fred, and those of your group. So let's keep on keeping on.
Add to what you just said. Those meetings were all a part of our feasibility study to determine whether it was reasonable to try to raise $10 million for this project in this point in time. And the consultants then had private confidential interviews with with key people in the community that had attended those meetings. They had 31 interviews covering about 33 or 4 giving units, if you will. And of that group, 31 expressed strong support for the idea of a better botanical center in Des Moines. So they didn't all say they'd give $1 million, of course, but they did say this is a good idea. So we felt pretty good about it. The consultants thought it was a good show. So.
Excellent.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred.
Any other questions? Seeing none, why don't we see if there's any public comment? Any comment from the public about today's meeting or any other thoughts that anyone might have? Thank you all for coming. Seeing none, we will adjourn, and those of you so excited about it, we'll see you this evening.